I'll be looking at two albums, and it will be down to you to decide which one is better, Warmaster by Bolt Thrower or The Grand Leveler by Benediction. Both were absolutely needed to deliver nothing short of a masterpiece with their third full-length Warmaster. After releasing two awesome albums, there's definitely a lot more pressure to make something more memorable, but there's even more pressure when the album is being released in 1991, which is quite possibly the greatest year for death metal releases ever. Classic albums like Mental Funeral, Like an Ever-Flowing Stream, Into the Grave, Clandestine, and several others were all released in the same year. Luckily for Bolt Thrower, they released not only their best album but a flawless death metal record to be cherished until the end of time. Everything about this album is amazing. Carl Willett's vocals are just as destructive, if not more, than on the first two records. When he bellows Cenotaph at the beginning of the song with the same name, it sends chills down your spine. The bass is also extremely heavy and plays a vital part in the overall sound, which by the way is heavier than a cinder block, smashing your skull. One of the more surpassing improvements on this album was the solos. Both went from a very Slayer-esque solo style to a coherent and memorable solos that fit perfectly with the songs here. But the real show stealer here is Andrew Well's performance behind the kit. Every time the double bass pedal hits, it's almost as if a shot is being fired by a cannon off in the war zone. Of course, I'd be a fool not to mention all the riffs on the band's previous effort, Run with Chaos. We saw Bolt Thrower down through their axes. We felt each doom-laden riff and every bone-vibrating chuck. On Warmaster though, the band must have started listening to American death metal bands because they tuned their guitars back up and found a much sharper tone similar to Death or Morbid Angel. Only Bolt Thrower's sound was a lot heavier. Despite the less doomy tone, the songs here are even more doomy than before. That may sound idiotic, but once you listen to the intro of Profane Creation or the first verse of Cenotaph, you will understand. One of the best parts about the band's decisions to doom it up is that it makes the faster moments seem even faster, especially when the thunderous double bass pedals are following suit. This is easily Bolt Thrower's best work. Warmaster retains the doomy essence of Run with Chaos, but also has the aggression and relentlessness in battle. There is no law. There isn't a single weak track here either. Every song could make a death metal greatest hits collection, and everyone could be the soundtrack to the medieval battle. In other words, this album is perfect. And the highlights of this album are Afterlife, Cenotaph, and Warmaster. The Grand Leveler is light years ahead of Benediction's previous effort. Everything about this record is better. The songwriting, riffs, vocals, solos, drumming, and everything else. Benediction decided to change things up structure-wise. Not every song is written in the same faction, and there is plenty of variety to be found here. Riff-wise, anyway. The undeniable Bolt Thrower influence is present once these doomy melodies on Jumping at the Shadows enter the fray, while Opulence of the Absolute features some of the great tremolo sections that would make the American Masters proud, as well as some mid-pace riffs that are absolutely crushing. The Grand Leveler is the most reminiscent of the band's fellow countrymen and women in its creeping mid-pace mayhem, but the title track here shows off the band's ability to go much faster at tempos, and it sounds awesome. Even though the debut full-length of Benediction features the legendary Barney Greenway of Napalm Death frame, the vocals on the Grand Leveler fit the music much better. Dave England's vocal performance here adds a dark atmosphere to the sound, whereas Barney didn't really add anything to the music. He was just growling in front of a already mediocre music. The drumming on here isn't much to brag about, but it did its job just fine, so no complaints here. The bass is pretty good throughout, thumping along audibly, while also providing some nice feels on the interest of Born in a Fever and Jumping at the Shadows. I might complain about the overall comparison of Benediction to the more well-known Bolt Thrower, but because it makes them seem like a subordinate, it's definitely a compliment. The Grand Leveler is a fantastic death metal record and one of the best to come from the UK, so you haven't heard these guys, then you know you have some homework to do. And the highlights here are Jumping at the Shadows, Opulence of Absolute, and Undirected Aggression.